What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. As you can see in the title, there's a lot of really heavy stuff we're going to talk about today. Some of this stuff I literally just saw on Paizo forums and Reddit posts. Right now, just before coming here to record this, I'm still kind of wrapping my head around everything. There's a whole lot we have to talk about today. There's a whole lot of feelings that now I have to rationalize out in my head, but it's not all gloom and doom. A lot of this stuff looks really fun, and I'm really excited to share all this stuff with you today. So let's get to it. As of the recording of this video, 7:15 p.m. on Friday the 16th of March, Black Dragon Gaming has 410 subscribers. That puts us just 14 subscribers short of having enough subscribers to fire off the Doomsday Dawn adventure, our next giveaway. Once we reach the 424 subscribers mark, I'll release a video with a little bit more detail as to when the contest will end, how we will run the session 0, how we'll organize everything. From there, it's just a matter of getting up to around $150 in patronage so I can take a day off work and have more time to play games with you guys. For more information about the giveaway, follow this card right here. The link is also in the description, along with the link to our Patreon. For those of us who have been following the channel for a while, I've recently changed my Patreon goals because I'm no longer waiting for a certain Patreon benchmark to buy new stuff. As you can tell, I probably sound super awesome right now. Here's hoping this mic doesn't crap out on me in a couple of days, but I'm not gonna jinx it. Before we go any farther, this episode of Black Dragon Gaming's Pathfinder 2nd Edition playtest updates was brought to you in part by the Inn of Planar Crossroads. Adam, Kane, Colin, Mal, Alex, Greg, thank you all so much for your friendship and your time and your support, and for letting me let one of my players kill someone's chicken familiar in an alternate universe with magic missiles. You'll see that tomorrow. But for now, we've got a lot of information to get through, so let's get to it. Alright, so after watching the Glass Cannon podcast, after watching the podcast Paizo put up on their Facebook from the trade show, I realized the original post I read about Deafened Dying didn't fill in all the blanks. There was some stuff left out that we didn't know. Real quick, let me correct myself. Let me fill the rest of the blanks in. When you go to 0 hit points, again, there are no negative hit points in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Your initiative moves to right before whatever it is that put you to 0. On your turn, you make a fortitude save. If you pass that first save, you go to 1 hit point. You are still unconscious, and you still have the dying condition, even though you have positive HP. Make that save the next round, and you're conscious with 1 hit point. Your dying condition also ticks down by 1, so if you were at dying 2, you go to dying 1. If you were at dying 1, you're good to go. Good to go, I suppose, is a relative term here, because the first turn you come back up, you are slowed for that round, which means you get 2 actions. You're prone on the ground, and you're disarmed. Now, notice I said you go to 1 hit point, but you're still dying. You can go back to positive hit points, but still have the dying condition and still be unconscious. You're still rolling those stabilization checks to get up on your own. The only difference here is at positive hit points, failure to stabilize doesn't tick down your dying condition. Of course, if you crit fail your death save, your dying condition increases by 2, but if you crit succeed your death save, that is an automatic wake up. I still don't quite know how I feel about this, but I will point out that it makes for a really weird couple of scenarios. Okay, so first example, let's say you have 1 hit point and you're facing down, I don't know, the Tarrasque. The Tarrasque comes up and gores you and does 5 bajillion points of damage, putting you from 1 to 0, and you're dying. You pass all the saves you need to pass, you go from 0 hit points to 1 hit point, and you're good, you stand up, you brush it off. Second scenario, say you have 1 hit point, a kobold archer manages to critically hit you, you go to dying 2, on your turn, you critically fail the fortitude save, and you die. I'm not sure how much of these rules we'll see go from the playtest to actual Pathfinder 2e, but I will say, A, they are super brutal, and I imagine player deaths will be much more frequent, and B, we go a little less from, challenge rating to the narrative being what kills you. If that low-level mook should happen to natural 20 his attack, and you should happen to natural 1 your save, you're dead. Don't neglect your con mod, kids. Now, I've broken down all my information for you guys into categories. First, let's talk about magic because, yeah, magic is changing a lot. Let's start with some easy stuff. First things first, there are no more 0-level spells. Spells go from 1st level to 10th level, but there are still cantrips. Exactly what that means, we are unsure of. We'll probably figure it out in the coming weeks. Next little fun tidbit, illusion spells can now foil detect magic. Detect magic spells can now only auto-detect illusion spells of a lower level. So a level 1 detect magic spell can only detect a cantrip illusion spell. If the spells are the same level, it forces opposed rolls. Those opposed rolls will most likely be made by your spellcasting modifier, which is your casting modifier plus your level. That information plus 10 will equal your saves for your fireballs, your hold persons, things like that. Speaking of hold persons, let's address the elephant in the room and in my title. The Save or Suck spells are getting a huge overhaul in Pathfinder 2nd edition. Henceforth, they will have 4 degrees of effectiveness. To quote Mark Seifter from a Paizo forum, figuring out a way to handle save or lose effects that was more fun to play with than your monster or PC either wastes their turn, slumber hexing or hold personing, you understand, or instantly wins, is what led him to formulate the design document for the 4 degrees of success in the first place. That way you can do something that's still somewhat useful even if what you're targeting makes it save, though not if they critically succeed, and then something powerful but not insta-win if they fail, and something more extreme, like that insta-win probably, on a critical fail. Which of course has the added benefit of having your enemies take double damage should they critically fail the save versus fireball. Of course, I've already been doing that in most of my games. I believe the natural 20 and the natural 1 to be all powerful. However, I really like that Paizo is taking what I think is probably the most popular house rule in Pathfinder and making it canon, making it legit, making it, dare I say it, rules as written, because really I think most of us were doing that anyway. So right now we don't exactly know what the 4 degrees of effectiveness will mean, but I imagine, and people on Reddit also imagine, it'll be something like this. For the purposes of this spell, we're going to use Hold Person as an example. I cast Hold Person at you, you critically fail your save, you're probably paralyzed, this is probably the point, and we don't know how coup de grace rules are going to work right now, but if they exist, that's the point in 1E where the Barbarian runs in, coup de grace, and that's that. Of course, remember, a critical fail is not just a natural 1, it's failing to meet the DC by 10 or more, so against low-level guys, this will still happen a lot. This essentially just puts a bit of a buffer in so you can't Hold Person the boss, then coup de grace him. A favorite strategy of mine. I will be sad to see it go, but it's certainly balanced to do it, I will definitely admit. If I cast Hold Person at you and you only fail the save, it will still be bad, I'm sure. You might be reduced to 1 action, something like that. The fireball will still do fireball damage, but it won't be an insta-win, again, in the case of Hold Person. Now, it seems that even when you pass your saves versus spells, there will still be some minor effect. Imagine the spells in Pathfinder 1E that are Fortitude negates or Will negates are now Fortitude partial or Will partial, which I'm totally fine with because, again, if I cast Hold Person at you and you pass, I've essentially done nothing but burned a resource on my turn. I still get to be valid, and it kind of gives back a little bit from taking away the insta-win that spell used to be. Critically passing stuff means nothing happens, you're good, scot-free. Roll a natural 20 or exceed the DC by 10 or more, you're fine. It makes the game much more balanced to do this. Again, it makes the 4 versus 1 encounters that you might see last for a lot longer, and it takes a little bit of power away from the almighty spellcaster. In my opinion, that's why the spellcaster is so powerful in 1E, is its ability to cast the Save or Sucks and just set up your marshals or even your other casters who are just a little bit better with a weapon to set up something like a coup de grace, take someone off the board, start ticking down the action economy until the game is done. Rest in peace, Slumber Hex from the Witch, while the Slayer moves up and, slays the slumbering thing, but out with the old and with the new, I suppose. Speaking of magic stuff, this is probably a good time to talk about that second big scary elephant in the room. The rules for magic items, as I speculated, are changing. We're going to implement a new system known as Resonance. From what I've found on Reddit, every character has a pool that recharges daily, tentatively speaking, your level plus your charisma modifier, which is used for magic items. At the start of the day, you pour some of this resonance into your belts of giant strength, your amulets of natural armor, all that fun stuff. But you otherwise spend points during the day to use consumable items, including but not limited to potions and wands. This makes healing an actual resource tax instead of just go buy the wand of Cure Light Wounds and after combat hug it until you feel better. Some 5e players are going to have to correct me on this if I'm wrong. Again, my 5e knowledge isn't what it could be, but this sounds a lot like attunement. This is a huge jump from what we're used to. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it, however. There's a lot of other things in this video we'll talk about that I've gleaned from podcasts, which would indicate that there will still be ways to raise the numbers of your stuff. And in addition, we can confirm that the Cloak of Resistance and the Ring of Protection will not be printed in the 2nd edition core rulebook, so you won't necessarily have all these items that you just absolutely positively must dump your resonance into to stay relevant, though there probably will be one or two still. However, what I can say that this does mean is that dumping your charisma will no longer be a thing for sure. Quick divergence from all of the time I just spent organizing to note that the roll-up system is changing. Your ability score generation will be more about your character's path. You assume the ancestry, background, and class, or as Paizo is referring to it, your ABCs. Isn't that adorable? So we might not even necessarily be rolling stats. We might see generation, not unlike Starfinder, so we might not even really be able to dump our stats. We can't confirm that one quite yet, though. We'll just have to see. Speaking of Starfinder, this is a good time to note that bulk used in Starfinder to determine encumbrance will return. Gone are the days of having to look up that table for encumbrance and knowing your strength mod and knowing the multiplication to the encumbrance table for being big or for having huge strength. Nope, now it's just straight up bulk. Easier to track on the fly, no one has to stop for 5 minutes and figure stuff out. Frankly, until I used auto-generated sheets, encumbrance for both my players and my characters that I would make, unless somebody called me on it or I was being terrible, was either I'm probably fine, I'm not carrying that much, or this is questionable, I'm carrying a house with me now. And that was partially because you'd have to drop everything, check a bunch of tables, stop the game in the process. Bulk stops that, bulk fixes it, works for me. Now let's talk about some combat stuff, because I mean that's what we do in Pathfinder, right? We cast Hold Person and then beat people over the heads with our maces until they're dead. Oh, wait. I guess we can't really do that anymore, but we certainly still will be going toe-to-toe with all the bad guys. So here's all the stuff I've gleaned from the Glass Cannon podcast, from the Trade Show podcast, again, from forum diving about combat. First off, you know how Paizo's been saying they're really, really excited for you to find your first +1 longsword in all their posts? In the Trade Show podcast, the players fought a cleric of Asmodeus who used a +1 mace. That +1 mace, in addition to maybe, probably, adding modifiers to attack and damage, it wasn't innately discussed, did an extra damage die, so the 1d8 mace was hitting for 2d8, so a +1 enchantment is essentially Vital Strike. We've talked before on this channel about the days of knowing when you can and can't Vital Strike are gone. Well, yeah, the days of Vital Strike apparently are when you have enhancement bonuses on your weapon. If that means a +5 mace hits for 5d8, that is terrifying, that is super awesome, and I think I understand why. It appears we'll be getting max hit points at every level, and again, your races, like in Starfinder, will have their own hit die that's applied to your level 1 hit points. The only one we can confirm right now is the human. The human is a d8 hit die. It also appears that things like masterwork weapons are going to get even more powerful and even more awesome moving forward. Weapons now have qualities in Pathfinder. There will now, in addition to the regular basic weapon you can find, be 4 weapon qualities we can apply to our weapon. Or, which is probably a -1 to hit, it wasn't expressly said, Expert, a +1 to hit, Master, a +2 to hit, and Legend, a +3 on your attack roll. These are not magical. This is the guy with craft weapons. I think this tells us a whole lot about downtime. It's not just going to be, and we Rise of the Rune Lords boys over at the Interplanar Crossroads can speak to this because we're at like 60 days waiting for our wizard post book 2 to get all of our stuff together. Now it's also going to be the fighter, the paladin, the marshal who's making us better in combat instead of just here's a masterwork something and a mithril this, go nuts. Now, whether or not your blacksmiths in the party will be able to apply this to weapons throughout the game remains to be seen, and I'm kind of doubting it, but hey, maybe. It appears weapon qualities are going to be overhauled as well, and a lot of them seem incredibly relevant. Thus far, we've seen that a dagger has the agile weapon quality, which means that additional attacks take a -4 penalty instead of a -5 penalty. One assumes that the -10 from the second attack might instead be a -9, though we can't confirm that for sure right now. I guess we'll have to see. Either way, this may be where 2-weapon fighting goes. In Pathfinder, most of the time, we want our offhand weapon to be light. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, it looks like we want our weapon to be agile. In addition to a rapier being able to disarm somebody now, the rapier also has the deadly property, which means you get an extra damage die when you critically hit. That extra die of damage might not be multiplied on a critical hit, I'm not sure. The guy just grabbed an extra die and rolled it. Speaking of critical hits, it looks like everything will be critting ×2, and there is no confirmation roll if you critically hit, if you beat something by 10 or more with an attack, or if you roll a natural 20, you do flat double damage. Which is something I'm really looking forward to personally because I've been pretty glued to rapiers, falchions, scimitars, elven curve blades, kukris, drow razors, you know, the 18 to 20 threat range weapons. Now I don't necessarily have to be. My first character I ever made in Pathfinder, my elf barbarian, went into combat with a simple spear. Now I can go back to that without feeling guilty. I'm okay with this. Next up, fumbles on attack rolls have no penalty unless the monster you're attacking or you, the character that the monster has fumbled attacking, have an ability that says otherwise. I imagine this will probably replace the big attack of opportunity builds like Come and Get Me Barbarians. If you fumble against me, I get a free attack. However, that's probably most likely going to just consume your reaction. However, it's still pretty sweet. Also, when you consider how easy a party might fumble against a high CR encounter, especially if that high CR encounter is way over their head, that makes it a little more balanced and a little less scary for sure to decide you want to go fight 5 or 6 CRs over your head, which I can get behind because my players like to do that a lot and I like to feed my players that. So yeah, sure, great, let's do it. Next up, flat-footed is no longer an armor class now. It is simply a condition that makes you take a -2 to both your touch armor class and your regular armor class. I'm not quite sure how I feel about this. I like playing rogues, I like my precision damage, but I'm sure the rogue will have plenty of other ways to get damage in. So if it means I have to track one less thing, I guess I can live with it. Yeah, sure, we'll go for it. Speaking of rogues, and we've talked about rogues a lot here, the rogue has a reaction called Nimble Dodge, which adds a +2 circumstance bonus to armor class versus an opponent they can see that is attacking them. Again, remember you only have one reaction in a given round, but that's still one reaction the rogue can take to just quickly add a +2 to their armor class. Whether or not that does away with the dodge feat remains to be seen. I kind of doubt it, but hey, maybe. Fighters also appear to be the only characters that have attack of opportunity reactions, all monsters aside, and fighters appear to be the class based the most around reactions. Fighters also apparently get more details this Monday on Paizo's blog, so yeah, expect that really soon from us. I'm really stoked. Fighters also have a reaction called Raise Shield. If you didn't spend that action to get your shield up and add it to your armor class, you can do that as a reaction. I guess it's kind of their Nimble Dodge because the AC bonus comes out to be the same. So I guess you don't necessarily have to worry so much about attack, 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 pass if you're afraid of something hitting you. If you see it's going to hit you by only one, you can pop up your shield. You're good to go. Down now to the stuff that's not necessarily so meta-shaking. A move action is now called a stride, and an attack action is now called a strike. A human has a base speed of 25. In armor, that speed is reduced to 20. Readying an action now costs 2 actions, essentially using your third action in that turn later on. Aiding another counts as a reaction, and flanking still gives us that +2 bonus. The 5-foot step has been replaced with an action known as step. It does not provoke reactions like the 5-foot step, but it uses an action. What I'm taking away from that is if you're surrounded by fighters or something with attack of opportunity reactions, we step back and then we can move with no hassle, no penalty, no having to worry about exactly what the withdraw action does. Streamlining 101. Speaking of move actions, you can't split a move action. What that means is if my move speed is 20, I can't move 10 feet, smack you, move 10 feet, and then have used 2 actions. The entire move action must take place at once, so technically we still have spring attack, we can move, hit, move, but it would consume our entire turn. We can also now spend an action to take cover behind something we're using as cover, a rock, a larger PC, you get the idea, to increase the cover bonus from 2 to 4. Weaknesses on monsters also have been re-upped. For example, a skeleton has weakness to positive energy 2. It takes 2 extra damage when exposed to positive energy, but a zombie just has flat weakness to slashing, meaning a slashing weapon does double damage to the mindless, shambling, stinky dead bodies, which means we're done with them faster, sure. For all the druids and cavaliers out there, henceforth we must spend an action to command our pets. The pet will then take 2 actions and leave us with 2 actions, which is good for all the players who are in parties with the druids and cavaliers and summoners and stuff, playing with their phones, waiting on their turn to come up. But it might make animal companions a little less powerful. We'll have to see where they go with it. Now, also, throughout mostly the Glass Cannon podcast, a lot of stuff was revealed about our skills. First and foremost, perception is no longer a skill. Everybody has it. All characters, all monsters, all anything with senses essentially now has also a perception DC, which is your perception bonus plus 10, essentially a passive perception. This is what stealth rolls are rolled against. If you're actively looking for someone who's sneaking around, then you roll, and you might be rolling against his stealth check, you might be rolling against his stealth DC. Either way, the first thing I can directly take from this is there's no longer like the metagaming, oh, I've seen the GM roll something, or oh, the GM has asked me to make a perception check, but I don't see them, oh, I died. but I knew it because I'm the player and my GM asked for a perception check. Now the GM simply needs to know your passive perception to know whether or not he succeeds or fails and tells you stuff and or shanks you. I think this is also a common house rule, and I really like that Paizo is just kind of essentially bringing house rules into the mainstream, into, again, rules as written. It's a little extra work on a GM to know everybody's passive perception, but not that much. And it gets rid of metagaming. What's not to love? Everybody can now also roll untrained skills. These are rolled at 1d20 plus mod minus 1. So if I'm rolling, say, like Knowledge Arcana, but I'm the barbarian, if my intelligence is 10, 1d20 minus 1 is my Knowledge Arcana. Speaking of names of skills, there's now also a skill called Society, which probably replaces Knowledge Local. Hey, speaking of Society, real quick, if there's any Society players out there that would like to see Society coverage of the changes on Black Dragon Gaming, throw it in the comments. I'm not really much of a Society guy myself. The closest Society games are probably like an hour and a half from my house, so I don't know a whole lot about it, but hey, if you guys want it, I'll help you out. Now, we talked earlier about how the rapier has disarm. Disarm and probably most of the combat maneuvers are now athletics checks versus a reflex save DC equal to 10 plus the person's reflex save bonus, essentially their passive reflex save, replacing their CMD. All the combat maneuvers now also count as an attack action, so if I punch you in the face and then try to trip you, the trip will take a -4, but it uses a skill check which may be easier to abuse and thus easier to pull off. Moving forward, skills will have various tiers, known as untrained, trained, and expert, which are based on your class. We've talked about untrained, that's d20 plus mod minus 1, but a trained check is d20 plus your level plus your modifier. Expert, same idea, but we tack a +1 on top of that. In addition, skill unlocks like we saw in 3.5 and like what we see on the Unchained Rogue are going to exist moving forward. We don't know a lot about them, but we do know that medicine skill unlocks, which likely replaces heal, will restore hit points, not unlike Cure Light Wounds or now the heal spell. In addition, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but I really like this, we can critically succeed, we can critically fail our skill checks. Beat the DC by 10 or natural 20, you get an extra bit of information, fail it by 10 or get a natural 1, and you probably get something misleading. This may be something I implement moving forward even in 1E. I've kind of messed around in Lordly Caliber with degrees of success and failure like Warhammer does. This is kind of sort of essentially that, but eventually you'll just level up so much that you probably won't crit fail too much, at least as long as you're not like, again, the barbarian rolling Knowledge Arcana, or like the fighter who rolls Knowledge Nature and suddenly thinks the entire inner sea is one gigantic water elemental. Yeah, had it happen once. Now, in addition, before we jump out of here, another couple of miscellaneous things. For starters, the logo we see on the Pathfinder playtest, this logo right here, is not the Pathfinder 2nd edition logo. Personally, I'm hoping the flag and the sword thing that makes the P comes back because I really enjoy that. In addition, in the playtest and probably the core book, actions will be marked with black squares. If something like a spell or an ability would take 2 actions, there will be 2 black squares by its name. 1 action, 1 black square, 3 actions, 3 black squares. Reactions will be marked with black circles. I don't know if this will necessarily carry over to my character sheets because I'm really good at just jotting in random notes for what something does most of the time and then usually forgetting it anyway. But I'm sure a lot of people out there will enjoy this because it makes flipping through the ye old big book of feats a lot easier to do, a lot quicker. If you need to pick like a bonus reaction for the fighter, look for the circle. So there's definitely been a lot of meta-shaking stuff released, and I don't even know how to feel. Are you guys still stoked for Pathfinder 2nd edition out there? Are we still building item crafters? Are we still praising the wizard, us dumb, lowly fighters who can't hold person? I don't know how to feel. I have so many questions. Leave your thoughts, as always, in the comments below, and we'll talk all about them. As always, of course, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. We'll see you next time.